All right, so let's kick off. We are in week 4, and I just wanted to recap quickly on what we have kind of gone through in the last 3 weeks. And really, it has been a build-up, and I hope you have been able to feel that during our conversations. So the first one was really reviewing market problem fit and the route to market, the channel strategy, how we get our product to market. We looked at the market problem, which kind of touches on what we are chatting here with Abu, without the solution bias. Often we look at the solution we have, and we tend to fit all the problems in the market to that solution, which doesn't always work. And especially with the ears of the customer. If you are not listening to what the customer thinks the problem is, by the way, sometimes the customer doesn't understand the problem, then you may find that you guys are talking about two different things. We then developed a sharper value proposition where we went through a couple of ways to try and understand the core problem, which was empathy mapping, and then also looking at jobs to be done. So that took us, helped us develop a sharper value proposition. Let me just mute this. Sorry, I'm just trying to mute. Andrew, can you try and mute Edward? I don't seem to have yeah, thank you. All right, the next week we looked at B2B partnerships and trying to understand how, and I'm sure many of you guys are doing this, you're not going to the market alone, you're going through with other partners, sometimes companies that are much bigger than you, much more structured. And it was really about identifying the right partners, defining joint value propositions, and then defining roles and responsibilities of how you will go to market. The third week, we looked at, and this was just last week, this was a long session. This is where we looked at sales. What is sales? We tried to define sales. We looked at 2 important statements that you must be able to answer with anything that comes out of your mouth, specifically around your value proposition, which is so what and who cares. We looked at the buyer influencers, the different people who you might have to speak to, even within the same organization, who will influence whether you're able to sell or not. We looked at competition, and we looked at buying cycles, which happens for any product anywhere in the world. People go through a buying cycle, whether it's just a pencil or you're buying, I don't know, hydroelectric power dam. We looked at sales teams and the differences in terms of the kind of sales teams you would need for a B2B kind of engagement or versus a B2C. And similarly, you could look at a hybrid where you have B2B2C and try and understand what kind of team you would need to be able to sell that. And then lastly, we looked at sales team development and strategy around the same. Any questions or comments before we go through today? We'll be looking at a sales engine tools and tracking. So basically, once you have your teams in place, once you have your sales process or an idea of how you engage the market in terms of a sales script, it could be as simple as a script or an all-out engagement booklet that you can create that your teams can then use to try and replicate as they are going into different sales. You then now need to be able to capture this engine in terms of sales tools and processes so that you can replicate it over and over. By now, a lot of you have already been introduced to myself. My name is Andrew, and I'm the lead consultant. I'm assisted by one very able Ken Thimba, CEO of Sales Resource Africa, who's also a very, very seasoned insurance salesperson. So even as we go through today, if you have particular questions around how insurance works technically in the back end, or even just simple, kind of questions, general questions around sales, like what we were discussing, some of you found us discussing with Abu, please feel free to bring that up. Today's session shouldn't be too long. It should take us to the top of the hour, maybe about quarter past the hour, depending on where you are. So we will be looking at architecting a sales engine. So obviously we are targeting insurtech startups, and that has a kind of slight bias to it. But you will realize that the importance of sales tools is really to support growth beyond where you are now. It is to support growth beyond the individuals that are in the organization right now, including yourself. It is to show your potential funders, your potential partners, that not only do you know what you're doing, you do have a structured way of tracking the most important thing that there is to track in a tech company such as yours, which is the amount of pipeline you're generating and how much of that pipeline are you turning into actual dollars. Without that view, you're just, for lack of a better term, you're just talking hot air.
Yeah.
You can claim that you're doing stuff, but people prefer to see actual numbers, and so that they can actually see growth. And it's also important for you, and we'll talk about why that's important, because you'll be able to see if you're improving in terms of how you sell and what it is that you sell. It'll show you where you have roadblocks or pinches in your funnel that slow you down, and you'll then be able to either put resources there or fix processes so that you can get better at what it is that you do. So we call it Insurtech Conundrum. Sorry? Wow, okay, just a second. I think now, yep, we're good. So we call it the Insurtech Conundrum, which is you've built this fantastic insurance product, but you're struggling to build a predictable revenue stream. And a lot of the time it's because you're low on resources, especially manpower often. You're the founder, CEO, key main developer, main salesperson. You're doing all those roles. How do we then get to a point where you're able to start seeing where you need to start investing in the business so that you can start to see traction in sales, which is one of the things that I'd say that are critical. You have long sales cycles, specifically if you're doing B2B, if you're working with big partners. I was talking to one of the cohort earlier today, and they were speaking about a 12-month sales cycle, an engagement that has been going on for almost a year. And that's kind of typical, especially when you're talking about big companies. But you can imagine that's a private company. When you're talking regulator, when you're talking government institutions, you're talking 12, 18 months, maybe even longer if you miss specific periods, especially around budgeting and so on and so forth. You have to build trust. A lot of us are new in the business. You don't have much of a track record. So where you can build trust is by showing that you have the methods, you have the tools to track data, specifically around the key components of your business. And because I'm here talking about sales, of course, I'll be talking about sales tracking solutions. You have limited resources. We touched about that a bit earlier. And there's this thing called a spreadsheet, which unfortunately has become the bane of many, many organizations. And why do I say this? Because number one, it is almost free. If you're using Google Workspace, you get the tools literally for free. You get sheets, you get docs, you get all these things. If you're using Microsoft, you get them. You're paying a little bit of money, but you get these tools for free, and you start to build solutions for yourself around this spreadsheet with a manual follow-up.
Financial benefits.
Sorry? I don't think that is for us. Somebody sounds like they're telling. Okay. Yeah, sounds like someone is on a call here and also selling a solution somewhere else, which is quite it's quite cool if you think about it. But yeah, if you are able to get over some of these challenges by the use of a structured sales engine approach, which we'll talk through today, which starts with the concept of how should sales work for us in my organization, to capturing that concept in some tool. And that's what we'll talk about today. So moving from ad hoc to an engine, where before this, you have a reactive approach to sales, which is, oh, I think there's an opportunity here. Or you bump into someone who asks you, hey, I hear you guys are doing some great things. Come and talk to us. You have chaotic processes and follow-ups that happen on the fly, low visibility into what your actual pipeline is. Personality-driven sales. This is something that I will ask Ken to speak about when we start talking about this, when we finish with this slide, which is you find that often salespeople tend to be of a certain type of personality. And those people who are outgoing and engaged in the market you tend to think that they are doing a good job because they always have a story. And more often than not, you'll find that beyond their boisterous nature, sometimes there's very little actual work happening, which leads to inconsistent results. And we want to move from there to a proactive, structured approach, data-driven decision-making, clear and transparent process that is repeatable, and a sales engine that can be scaled as your business grows. So in terms of our agenda, we look at defining the sales process, we look at the toolkits, we look at some of the KPIs that matter, and then looking at building actionable dashboards. So, Ken, any comment on personality-driven sales? I'm sure you might have 1 or 2 things to say there.
Yeah, for a moment I thought you were talking about me, so I got a bit freaked out. Let me turn my video on so that okay. Yeah, so it looks better with the video off. Anyway, yes, personality-driven sales, or the sales voice of the startup. Again, it's like Andrew said, sometimes you get that guy who talks a lot. I'm one of them. So he has an opinion about everything and anything, and he's almost in every conversation. And that's the complete opposite psychometric profile of a techie, which is by and large most of you guys who want to sit in the back and fix real problems. Now, part of the challenge of of personality-driven sales is that many insurance companies, which are basically sales institutions, employ loads of them. The guys who are going to knock on your door, who are going to be brave enough to walk into a conversation and build up conversation and so on. But like Andrew said, a lot of it is hot air. So what you should be trying to be able to build for them is something repeatable and something that they can follow. So, for example, a proactive like what you see in front of you, a proactive structured approach. You should be helping them then to equip their salespeople, for example. Always make sure that in any conversation that they are getting pertinent details, where someone works, what they do, and so on and so forth. So such that you're able to build a structured questioning model. I think at the beginning of these sessions, Andrew shared with you a questionnaire. Andrew, am I right? And everyone had to fill a questionnaire with certain things, certain information that he needed to extract. And it's being able to build something like that, that is a structured approach that will be able to give a specific answer over and over again. So your sales process should actually follow what the manual process is. So is the manual process collecting the lead, finding out needs, and so on and so forth? That's where data-driven decision-making comes in. In terms of insurance, something that Abu talked about earlier, insurance is an intangible. I believe that technology, and more so insurtechs, have the ability to change the intangibility and the promise that insurance gives to something tangible. What do I mean by that? That means an app on your phone or on your computer where I can check my insurance status, where I can be able to see, yes, how much policy life and so on do I have. Those are the real problems that people face. So while defining your sales process, it's important to understand those touch points, and more so the cultural ones. But let me stop there. Maybe, Andrew, we could go on and we'll take questions and stuff later on. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. So as Katie kind of inferred there, your process dictates the tools, not the other way around. So you want to find, if you're getting an off-the-shelf tool, you want to find a tool that fits the process that you follow, that makes sense for you as best as possible. And that may mean dropping some aspects of certain tools or adding on to them so that they match the way that you sell, the level of complexity that your sale is. So someone selling, phone-based funeral cover will have a very different, would want a very different view of their sales, as opposed to someone who is closing, B2B partnerships with a telco company, for example. So it's not about the tool. It's really around first defining your process and then seeing which tool will fit as best as possible into that process. I like this warning here, and I picked it up somewhere, and I thought that, having a tool without a process is just an expensive database, especially when you're paying for it. You must have a process that, both in terms of review, how often do we look at these tools? How often do your teams look at these tools? How often do they update the tools? And then using the information that's coming out from these tools to help us make decisions. So don't just get an expensive database, but get something. And as we go into the actual tools, we'll talk about, should we be buying something? Should we get something that's free off the shelf? Or should we develop something? I know some of you have gone into development of your own CRM tools. But that said, I wanted to bring your attention to the right side of the screen, which is this sales funnel infographic. And it basically, we'll see this thing at least 4 times in the rest of this presentation. But the first thing that you'll notice is that it looks like a funnel. So depending on the kind of sale that you're doing, your funnel may be very wide at the top and then narrows down, or could be much more tapered, gently tapered. Because especially if you're doing B2B sales, you may find that if, for example, you're selling to telcos, in Kenya, you're probably talking to 4 companies at the most. If you're in Tanzania, maybe you're talking to a much larger number. But then again, your initial target market is finite. If you're doing a bottom of the pyramid funeral cover or transport cover through mobile phone, you're obviously looking at a much larger entry level where you're trying to create this awareness. But the important thing is to understand, how do you, first of all, identify the people who you want to target? And this takes us all the way back to our first value proposition conversation. Once you know your value proposition and you have developed the channel to talk to these people, that's where you create this awareness. And then that then now goes through the different 4 major steps, which is obviously awareness. You have created awareness in whatever way you do it. Some of you are using feet on the street, foot soldiers, whatever it is that you want to call it. Some of you are using social media. Some of you are using traditional above the line marketing, but you're creating awareness around your solution. The next thing is you create interest. After that, you have a decision by the customer. And lastly, there's an action. Either they buy or they don't. And we'll go into a lot more detail on that on the next slide. So this is where your process really must come to life. And this is where I always say that a lot of techies fail to spend enough time to understand the different steps of this sales process and the importance of mapping these processes. So I'll bring your attention to the right again. And you can see now we have gone from 4. We can break this down into these 7 steps, so to speak. They are still the 4 main ones: inquiry, consideration, intent, and then either you're winning or you're losing. But you can see that there's different steps in between. And we'll speak to some of those, and I'll help you. I think there's 2 slides from now. You'll be able to understand a lot more around how you will speak to each of those steps. But think of it in the buy cycle that we spoke about last week. So number 1, it's a prospect. Many of you have thought, okay, how do we prospect for the potential target customers that we have? I could go using a social media influencer who will do a short video for me, and we'll talk about how great this product is, and it saved them a lot of money when they had a sick child or whatever it is. That will go to a huge bunch of people. Some of them will be your targets, others will not be, depending on algorithms of TikTok and so on and so forth. So, you just cast your net very wide. Some people will click the link or click the ad or whatever it is, and that will then now be a lead. And the lead is somebody who probably has a need for what it is that you want. They haven't made a decision yet, but they are interested in what it is that you're doing. you now need to qualify. And this is this part here that you'll see under number 2. You will have to qualify this lead, because this person may actually just click and read through the system that you're using, whether it's social media or whatever, may collect some information that will allow you to reach back out to this person, or they will send you their number, say, I'm interested in this product, please call me. And you will then now qualify. Your name is, your age, blah, blah, blah. This is what we are selling. This is roughly how much we are selling it. And that is the pitch part. You're now pitching. This second bit of qualification down here, which is slightly different from this initial discovery call, is where you're in between discovering if this person has what we'd like to call BANT, the budget, authority, the need, and the timeline, as in they're pressed within a certain timeline to do something about the issue that they have. They have the authority in terms of their being able to make a decision. Budget, they have control over the budget either now or in the future. And then now we go into the actual engagement, where we do an actual proposal to them. And then now they may start negotiating, kind of back and forth, and asking you whether you can do a better price, or if they only want it for 6 months or 3 months, so on and so forth. And some of you are providing solutions that allow for all this to happen without any actual interaction with a human being. The app is able to do it, or whatever solution you're providing, and then a decision is made, and this guy or this lady pays for the solution and moves on. Now, the reason I'm saying mapping this is key is because between each of these 7 steps, you have to identify where this customer is and push them to the next step. And that can happen, like I said, whether it's a face-to-face interaction. This is what salespeople do. When you look at a shop and you make eye contact with a product, there are salespeople who can identify that and then get very interested in what it is that. The second bit is, like I mentioned, being able to accelerate this funnel and pushing leads as fast as possible from prospecting to making a decision. And this is where, if you do this well, you'll find that you'll be able to document this, you'll be able to automate it to an extent, so that you know where your customers are within your sales process. And I'll stop here, because I'd like KT to maybe speak a little bit around this process in his own words as a salesperson selling insurance. And then we'll look at how can we then now capture these different steps in a tool, and more importantly, in the language that we speak to each other in the organization. KT, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Forrest. I can't keep calling you Andrew, and I call him Forrest or Foro. It's a childhood nickname, so please allow me. You've talked about many things, and this is the real crux. And in my, say, 10 years of sort of helping startups with route to market and go to market, is I usually find they're extremely eager to jump onto the close, and it's almost like a yes or no answer, and they want to push the client quickly to the close. And when the person doesn't close, then your CRM or however you measure says that, yes, I keep hitting the wall in so many places. Yeah, so your what we call in sales, your closing ratio is very, very low. Out of the total number of people you see, even in your B2B marketing, all of you just, especially those guys who are partnering with insurance companies and banks, just look and ask yourself, number one, how long has the sales process taken? Number two, how many have you closed? So we were speaking, in Kenya, there are 42 insurance companies. Around about, I think, 500 or less insurance brokers and agents. So how many of those people have you reached out to, and how many have closed? If you take a percentage of that, you'll get a very shocking claims, or rather, sorry, you'll get a very shocking closing ratio. And the reason for a low closing ratio is because many startups forget or take for granted this core sales process. So prospecting is one. Again, identifying the lead and making the pitch is also very, very key. Sometimes you even change in the practical or face-to-face sales. Sometimes you qualify even before and combine both the pitch and the proposition. And at a certain point, you also negotiate before getting your yes or no answer. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to show you this practically. And what I will do is I will share something on the chat, and I will ask you to subscribe, and maybe later you can share. But part of this, the sales lesson here, will be included in that link that I have sent you right now. And once you're able to have gone through it, I can be able to break down this sales process at the end of this session. So I'd like to just stop there, and but by saying you've got to be able to really understand that, yes, this sales process is a lot deeper than what most people think. Prospecting, making sure that the lead is correct, qualifying them, and pitching, because those are the foundational things that will bring you the decision. And we have a saying in sales: you've got to start getting your prospect to start saying yes to you early in the sales conversation. So as much as possible, and again, I'll explain that in detail, you've got to, your process has to be such that it is very easy to move from one stage to another. Let me stop there. Again, it might sound cryptic, but we are on hand to explain a bit more.
Thanks, Katie. So yes, there, like I mentioned earlier, there's always two aspects to sales. One is the science, and one is the art. What Katie also touched on there is a little bit of the you can call it the art/science, which is the psychology of sales. If you give your customer, your potential customer, the opportunity to say no too early to anything that you're talking about, they get used to refusing you. And think of it as simple as nowadays all websites are asking you, to accept cookies, and hardly anybody accepts them as they are. And it's just, kind of human nature where you think, I don't actually need this. So you get rid of it. And that already sets your brain down a certain route. So even in your sales engagement, and that's why we talked about the importance of preparation. So you prepare even the questions, the kind of conversations that you're going to have, and you test them. And we'll do some of this face-to-face in the coming week, where you're able to see how well your questions are landing so that they are open and they are opening up the customer to speak and not just yes, no type of questions, because that has a big psychological lever in terms of how the customer behaves when you come to the bigger parts of consideration and intent and actually decision making. So this is the slide that I want you guys to also have a lot of kind of understanding around, because this is where we start looking at how is it that we speak. And I'm giving you an example of an organization that I've worked with before. And this is how they processed within CRM where they were with a customer engagement. So when there's just awareness, this is a prospect, they would say that the customer is at 10% within the sales funnel. And this should be the largest number of customers you have. If, as KT said, you're targeting the 42 insurance companies in Kenya, this is all 42 of them. If you have sent out a flyer to them and they have all at least seen it, you're creating awareness within these organizations, or you've done a presentation at the last insurance industry event. So a customer engagement has happened, and maybe 30 of these guys have come back to you and told you, let's speak later, so that there's awareness. The next is confirmed interest, where the customer has asked for a follow-up meeting, workshop, not just giving you a number, but they have said, actually, come through to our organization, or we are coming to see you at your offices so that we see a bit more about this thing that you're talking about. And this, at this level now, we say that it's an actual lead, and there's within the CRM system would say that this customer is at 20%. When we are pitching, it means that the customer team, including at least 2 influencers, remember the buyer influencers, have been engaged and understand the offer. So this could be a technical influencer, this could be a economic influencer like the CFO. You have actually engaged someone and they understand what you're offering. The fourth one is now we are qualifying. You have BANT confirmed. Remember, we talked about BANT, budget, authority, need, and timeline is confirmed. You could be talking to those same 2 influencers. You can now forecast this deal. So remember, before you get to 60%, you cannot say that this is a deal. You cannot forecast a number, because only when budget is confirmed can you say, because you may say that my product is worth $100,000, so to speak, and you've spoken to your customer, you've gone through all these steps, you've engaged your 2 influencers, they understand the offer, but then they tell you that the only budget they have is 20K or 25K. Are you going to reduce your budget? I mean, your cost of your product, so that you fit into their budget, so on and so forth. So only once you have budget confirmed from the customer could you then now forecast and say, I have a forecast of 25K, which is this customer, and we have engaged, so on and so forth. You can now move to the next level, where you actually have a proposal, where there's now you're engaging with the economic and technical decision maker, which confirms the final terms and conditions. So you have put a contract in front of someone. And I would like to tell you a quick story of something that I lived by in a lot of my last sales jobs. And it was this simple. One of my, sorry, someone's trying to get in. One of my sales managers once told me, if you want to know whether you have a deal, you've gone through all these steps. If you want to know if you really have a deal or if you're speaking to the right person, print out a contract and take it to them to sign. You will quickly learn who is wearing the trousers in that office, if they are able to sign that document, or they will tell you who must be called into the room. And you start to understand who is the actual decision maker. You will also get to learn where that contract must go. Remember, we talked about legal. If you haven't worked with legal by this time, legal will be called into the process. They will go through your contracts. And this is where things can actually slow down quite a bit. So it's important that you're going through all these steps in a measured way and know where you are in the steps so that you can accelerate it. So that, for example, when you're here at pitch or qualify, you now know there's budget and all that kind of stuff. Nothing stops you from giving a blank contract to legal, even at this qualify stage, so that they start looking at it and raising whatever issues that they have, so that by the time we come to proposal, we are putting our proposal on a contract which has already been approved by legal. And then finally, there's closure. Again, closure, if your timing is wrong, depending on the size of the deal, may take a long time because it may involve people who are beyond management. It could involve a board committee or a number of signatories who must be found. And I remember many a day when we are trying to close those last Q4 deals in December, where you're having to jump on a plane to look for a signatory who's already on holiday somewhere at the coast, and you have to go and look for that signature because you need this deal before the year ends. Any questions or comments on this? This is an important part of building your process. Remember, this is an example. You can take this into your own language, but knowing that these 4 steps, irrespective of what you're selling, always remain the same.
Perhaps a question, Andrew. Vusi here from Aura. I wonder if I love this. This is really, really good. What I've found is that in my own short sales experience, it's important to be able to ask the right questions. So questions really create the environment for the customer to share. The mistake that I've made a long time is that I get in front of the customer and I do most of the talking. Obviously, I'm trying to pitch what I have and try and make it fit in this environment of the customer, and I miss it. And quite frequently, opportunities have then either stalled or completely failed. You spoke about long sales cycles, B2B, and I've even now experiencing that kind of thing. I wanted just to check with you what your thoughts are. I know there are various sales approaches and methodologies out there. What do you think about the spin approach? I don't know if you've encountered it and how effective it is, because it drills more on questioning to uncover the true the true problems and the true opportunity, the cost of doing nothing, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So yes, there are many sales methods. I tend to lean towards strategic selling because it's a mix. But base rule, 80-20. Customers should speak 80% of the time, which means you have to be asking the right questions. Going back to preparation, how is it that my solution fits what I think your problem is? So what you want to do is sit in front of the customer and unearth this problem. So your question should be about their problem, not your solution. So confirming, hey, Mr. Customer, in your industry, we hear fraud is a big issue. Is that right? This guy will speak for 30 minutes. If you're not writing notes, you're the fool. The next question, if I was to reduce your fraud by 5%, what would that mean to your business? The guy will go on again, because now all you're doing is just reconfirming what you think your solution would do. So, and often, and I think this is where many of us make that mistake, you think this is the only chance I will get in front of the customer. Often, the reason that's the only chance you get in front of the customer is because you are the one who's talking too much. People like being listened to. People like, I mean, the human aspect of people, doesn't matter who they are, tend to like being listened to, and for people who understand their pain. So remember we talked about, let me get the name right, I've gotten it down here, the empathy mapping. You want to go through empathy mapping with this customer by asking open-ended questions that unveil either pain points or objectives. Then go away, go home, and map your solution value to gain for the customer or to pain. So either you're increasing gain or reducing pain. You must be able to do that. If you can do that on the fly, I mean, usually that tends to be very seasoned salespeople who have done it over and over again, but they never interrupt the customer talking about their pain. Let them complete their pain journey and talk about what gains they are looking for. And, even pretend to absorb them. And then now start, connecting the value that you're bringing to the market with that pain or gain. The reason it might be important to go away and come back later, depending on, of course, on what you're selling. If it's a complex sale, it might be better to leave, is because you can then document that value and maybe even put a cost benefit to that value. And even as you regurgitate this stuff to the customer, you can leave them with something that is your proof point of your value. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, but I'll probably be at the end of this. Remind me, I'll just put up a quick slide on that strategic selling and sprint selling, something we covered in previous Beamer Lab class, or we can speak about it when we meet face to face. But it is the 80-20 rule, by the way, is so important. I even make it 60-40. Speak much less than the customer. So, but for you to do that, you have to be super, super well prepared.
Andrew, Foro.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Add something. Yeah. Okay, just a quick one, just to reinforce what you're saying. I just want to talk about the qualification process and that BANT process. And your examples were perfect. So in terms of when you whipped out the blank contract, that determined authority. Yeah, so at that point, your sales manager would be able to tell that this person has or does not have authority to sign. In terms of budget, then as the salesperson, that's now your challenge to find out, do these people have a budget? But I wanted to just speak specifically around authority. So you need to define that. I mean, does this person have authority? But to me, what's key is the timeline, because the timeline ties into your sales process. So if you want to look at whatever CRM you have, or like I'm sure Foro and I have been hearing people saying, this process is taking too long. I've been talking to this bank for 1 year, and so on. If you are able to establish what that timeline was at that point, then you'd be ready for the journey. If you are told it's Cape to Cairo, then you'd adequately prepare, you'd pack your bags and so on and so forth. But what happens is, as salespeople, we are so eager to move to the next stage that we forget, for example, in Kenya or most governments, their budget cycle is July to June. So their financial year, the new financial year starts in August of every year. So you could be talking to this guy in November and you're wondering, why doesn't he close? He has ticked all the boxes. but he can't do anything because that product, or rather that budget, was not had not been put aside for that year. So in terms of timeline, he would be ready 12 months from now, which in a strange way goes back to in terms of your lead, and have the client has called for follow-up. Have you been able to ask them? Yes. Okay. What timeline are you talking about? So again, in a strange way, if you don't do the earlier stages properly, you start feeling like a hamster on a wheel. You're just going round and round, and these guys are not moving. That's all. Yeah, thanks. My experiment is still going on.
Thanks, Katie, but 100%. And what I would like to touch on is that understanding, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but understanding where you are in this process will allow you to know what to do to accelerate to the next step. So when you're pitching, say, for example, you're pitching to the technical buyer and the user buyers. These are people who maybe cannot give you the go-ahead, but you need them to say yes so that this process goes to the next step. So that is pitch. You're pitching. You're pitching, you've sold to the technical buyer. It could be the CIO and the user department. It could be, I don't know, the fraud department in the insurance company. If they buy in, your coach or whoever it is who's in this organization or your technical buyer will tell you, and if you ask the right question, how do I move to the next step? So you have to ask the right question. Who controls the budget for this? How much is the budget? And what are the timelines? So if this person cannot tell you that, they should help you identify the person that can tell you those things, because that is what will allow you to go through to the next step. So those of you who have mentioned that, oh, we have been selling to this customer, it's taking too long. The key thing is to understand, where are you in these steps? And what do I need to do to stop pitching and move to qualification? What do I need to stop qualifying to move to proposal? And who are the people involved? If they're the same people, or what should I actually do? Because especially with big customers, it can be very frustrating. They keep pulling you back. Oh, now we must pitch to the CFO, or we must now talk to the other person in the other department. You should also be able to draw the line and say, okay, we have done enough pitching. At what point do we move forward? So that you feel that there's also some movement. So your tech stack. Another good point here is avoid shiny object syndrome. What is shiny object syndrome? Shiny object syndrome is that thing that seems that to have all the bells and whistles, that is the hottest thing right now on the internet, and you think that's what you need. Your process, like we mentioned earlier, is what should determine the solution that best works for you. CRM becomes the single source of truth for all customer, partner, and prospect interactions. And CRMs have changed. There were days when CRM used to be Salesforce. Nowadays, things like ClickUp are CRMs. You have different kind of tools which are working much better, especially for startups, because they work the way a startup works. So you're not looking at pure CRM that assumes all I'm loading into there is customer information, but you have something like ClickUp, which allows me to also direct interactions within my organization. So this is non-negotiable because it ends a lot of these issues. Oh, I thought it was you who was going to call them. I thought the customer said they were here. You now are able to say, okay, I had this interaction with the customer. The next thing they want is a proof of concept. And in the tool, I can assign my lead technical salesperson to run with that proof of concept and report back using the tool. It provides visibility to everyone, including investors. For those of you who are now chasing investment into your organization. It enables automation and scalability, provides consistency. And consistency here is key because think of it growing beyond where you are now. Think of it growing beyond you as the founder, CEO, chief salesperson. How do you keep that knowledge within the organization so that you can improve on the good bits and remove the bad bits? And then lastly, it facilitates data-driven decision-making. Some examples on CRM, and here we are coming towards the end. Some of the CRMs that you can use. Obviously, you want to think about these 4 things: ease of use, integration to what it is that you're doing, scalability, and obviously startup-friendly pricing. So there are things which are free, they have free versions that you can use. And for many of the size of organizations that you have, things like HubSpot, things like ClickUp, the free versions will do a lot of the stuff that you want to do. And as you get more complex, you can now start going into the different levels of pay-per-use. You have process-driven solutions like Pipedrive, depending on what it is that you're looking for, if it's a visual pipeline activity based. And things like Pipedrive are things that are driven purely to kind of help you accelerate movement through that funnel. And then now for the scaling businesses, you have things like Salesforce. Obviously, this is used by big business, but again, it all depends on where you are in kind of the scale of your business, where you see yourself going. I don't see many businesses having to get to the point of using something like Salesforce. There are so many solutions out there, but which solution you pick should be determined by what you need. So sales enablement, this is what allows your sales team to get better at what it is that they do. Remember, I mentioned to you that one of the key things about a sales tool is to help you identify where your pain is. So if your pain is prospecting, you might need a tool that helps you find and qualify potential customers. Some of these obviously are biased towards a more developed market. Things like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I don't know how powerful this thing is in Africa. I know it does work, but again, these are things that you may want to look at. Obviously, again, depending on the target market, are you looking at B2C? I look at B2B2C. I look at B2B. So the requirement for prospecting and data would be different. Are you looking for engagement and automation? There are some tools there that you can look that will help streamline outreach and follow-up. We had a conversation earlier with an organization that is helping customers do this. So even amongst yourselves, I hope you guys are talking to each other and finding out who is doing what, because some of these tools are actually being developed by people who are in this cohort. And then if your pain point is around scheduling and demos, you may want to find a solution that helps you do that better. But of course, tying back to being able to give transparency, feedback, and then increase throughput in your sales engine. So pick one category that solves your biggest pain point today. Is it finding leads or spending too much time booking meetings? And solve for that. Because if you don't fix that now, you might not, grow to the next phase of being a startup. Lastly, I want to talk about leading versus lagging indicators. You must choose KPIs that matter to you. So what are lagging indicators? Many of the businesses I worked for used lagging indicators, which is the result of the sales process. How much revenue have I brought in? What is our win rate? Are we churning customers? This could be, especially in insurance, that would be an important measure. And then what are leading indicators? These are the activities that would drive new business. So trying to predict future results, number of demos booked, proposals sent, and shortening the sales cycle. And then visually being able to look at this, how often should we have a cadence of meetings that allows us to look at this so that we can measure it, we can manage it, and we can improve on it. So, lastly, you can read down there, lagging indicators are the scoreboard, leading indicators are the player stats during the game. Many of you guys watch all these stats on all the different sports, especially, for example, you're a basketball fan, soccer is getting there, but I think a lot of the American sports have for years and years built up on the importance of stats during the game. So a lot of these stats you're able to follow live as things are ongoing. And but at the end of the day, the lagging indicator is the final score. And I don't know if KT has in your sports days, what has changed since the mid 2000s to today, and if you've got any comment on that. But I think that will be the last slide from me. And as promised, it's 1/4 past the hour. But KT, the floor is yours. You can close with some comments around leading and lagging indicators.
Okay. Yeah, very quickly. Lagging indicators, again, is almost, it's like it says there, it's the result. It has already happened. Yeah. The beauty about lagging indicators is that you can then now go back and see what your win rate is. Yeah. How many times did I go out and how many times did I move the sales cycle from one stop to another? What did I churn in terms of customers? How many guys have I reached out to? How many have actually asked me to come in for a presentation? How many people do I have signed up? So again, yeah, Oro, thanks. Yeah, again.
Yeah, you can continue because you are already touching on some of these points. So
yes,
just go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you're talking about lagging indicators are the historical things. The leading indicators are the things that you can measure on a day-to-day basis and fix on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, number of demos per week. Again, number of demos per week will take you back to the number of calls per week. If you're getting more and more demos, but you're not moving from demos to decision, you will go back and start asking yourself, okay, am I pitching to the right person? Was this the right lead that I called? Did I qualify this person right? Again, we talk about velocity and the burnt process was, did I distinctly look at the timeline such that my expectations are not unrealistic? I'm not reporting to my boss. I'm not reporting to my board wrong figures. And are they verifiable? Again, and then conversion, demo to proposal rate, that's your closing rate. Yeah, and it measures the effectiveness of your demonstration. Again, selling to consumers, there's acquisition and conversion, but I want to do this practically. Yeah, right now we have 26 participants in this session. Foro, could you please go back to that slide where you had broken down? Just go back again. Yes, there. So there are 26 participants in this chat. I spoke about maybe 20 minutes ago about, and I said that I'm going to put something in the chat, and I'll wait for your reactions. Now, what I put in the chat was a link to my blog. Yeah. So basically what I've done is that I have figured out that, hey, these guys on Bima Lab are perfect prospects. Yeah. And they have an interest because they showed up for this session. So is my prospect correct? Yes. Is my lead, do they have confirmed interest? Maybe not in what I want to say, but probably what Andrew wants to say. So yes, they have confirmed interest. Pitch, product engagement. Yeah. Have we engaged the people? Yes, you are all here. You've all been engaged. Okay, do you have budget? I don't need a budget for my product, so I'm okay there. Authority, I also, if the person who reads what I put up clicks, that means they have authority. Need, maybe not, but I've stopped at that point, like Andrew said, and said, okay, what do I need to accelerate? I need to accelerate everyone clicking. So I will say something that will make people click. And from there, I can say, yes, out of the 26 people on this call, I should be able to close a certain percentage. Then there's the proposal, and then there's the engagement. So right now, of the 26 people, I have closed at least 2 or 3. And okay, I wanted to share my screen, but let me just call them out loud. There is, sorry.
Katie, I've allowed you to share. I'll stop sharing.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think I have just one more slide, which we'll do at the end.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll share this confidential information for a few seconds. So there's someone called GB Gikonde who has subscribed. I have, so everyone who agreed to my call to action here and asked to click is listed here. So I'm able to say, Vusi, thank you very much. I've closed you as quickly as possible. GB Kikonde and I think one other person. Anyway, basically, if Andrew, if you could go back to your screen, to what you had shared earlier. That, yeah, what, okay, yeah, there. So basically, yeah, basically the process you have just gone through very, very quickly was where I presented a product to you. I used certain influences and I tried to accelerate you getting into my, or rather subscribing to my blog. My success rate is 3 out of 26. If 3 out of 26, 3 out of 26 is 11%. I have an 11% closing ratio with the guys on this call. That means that going forward, I am able to measure, yeah, that if these people fit this profile, they are all building a product, they are techies, and they're building a product for insurance. My closing ratio is 11%. How do I move that closing ratio from 11 to 20 and to 30? What stages in this process should I fix? Was it the prospect? I think they're the right prospect. Confirmed interest, maybe. Product engagement, should I have engaged more? In terms of qualifying, did I qualify the right people? How about my proposal? Was it a strong enough proposal? Was the link attractive, etc.? How many of the people signed up? How many of you subscribed? So right now I'm at 11%. So that's the typical sales cycle. So that's how the tools that you employ should then be aligned to in terms of process. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Wow, thank you, KT. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better example. And it just also shows you guys how hard it is to sell. Because as KT said, typically you guys should be jumping on this. He's your co-host. He's a sales guru. He did, try and position a pretty simple proposal to you, but only 3 out of 26. Of course, there's quite a number of AIs that are part of that 26. But it just shows you how strong your proposal must be, but more importantly, the importance of data, and so that you know what I need to do to accelerate. So thanks so much for that, Katie. I think we came to the end of today with that. And I wanted to leave you guys with a good read for this week, which is around Connected CRM, which is implementing a data-driven, customer-centric business strategy by David S. Williams. So with that, I will open the floor to questions. I see Abu has a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question, but there's something also I wanted to let the members of this cohort know about. So last week you touched on, you kind of gave us like a heads up of what to expect this week, and precisely you've delivered on it. So thank you for that. But when I heard that you're going to talk about tools that's required for the sales team to be able to carry out their job more effectively, I thought about, just establishing a CRM that's specifically designed for African small businesses. And you mentioned something about the tools, and you said you want to get something that scales with your business. And that's fundamental in terms of small business, because you have an Excel spreadsheet that you mentioned initially. The problem with that is there's a limit, or it has limitations that, if you want to look at the holistic approach of your business, of your sales team, how you're performing. So what I wanted to establish is that, because if you look at generally, there's a study that about 75%, and you would attest to that, 75% of CRMs out there are not, like some of the tools are not being utilized. They're just like people are just paying for something, but the actual thing that you use on a daily basis is just the lead, the accounts, the contact and things like that, converting deals and all of that. These are the fundamental things that are more relevant within the CRM. So what we've done, so we come across a CRM, which is Wazo CRM, specifically designed for startup African businesses. And then it's a good tool for people to look into and try and see how effective.
Please put something in the link. Put a link in the chat, because this is the reason we have this cohort. You guys, is for you guys to share your experiences, what works for you, because that is exactly it. You don't have to go and get a big, Salesforce. That's why I said Salesforce might sound good, and but number one, it's very expensive. And for a startup, you'll only use maybe 4% of what Salesforce can do. So what solution actually works for you?
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll send the link for everyone to look at it.
Put it in the chat so that everybody is aware, and then they can make their own decision.
Yeah. So my question now to follow up, the question that I was going to ask is, I was waiting. The reason why I waited, because I was expecting you to touch on that, but so the question is motivating people to, like, your sales team. So for example, you have multiple people that, because obviously you cannot just do that for yourself. You have like few people that go out there and try and promote your product. The problem for me, the challenge is, how do you incentivize these people? Now, there's one aspect of it that says you work on commission. The amount of lead that you convert, you get this X amount. And then there's other people that demand an upfront payment, like you pay them on a monthly basis. So like, to keep that balance is quite challenging. So if, from your experience, your perspective, Ken can also, touch on that. So what advice would you give? Which approach do you think is more sustainable?
I think for sales, the rule of thumb is that there's a base salary, the percentage of which now you can play around depending on the seniority of the job. And then there is the commission-based salary. So that's a general rule of thumb. There'll always be an amount. So say someone's, let's say monthly, let's say it's 10,000 shillings. But the base salary that they take home for sure is half of that, 5,000 shillings. And then there's an accelerator, or rather performance based. The other 5,000 is based on them achieving the number of things. And what they need to achieve, by the way, is not just sales. You'd want them to be able to tick the boxes of, we updated CRM correctly, we kept good customer satisfaction up, and we also made our target. Now, if you make 100% of your target, you get the 5,000 shillings. If you make 100% of your target, you get 8,000 shillings. So you take home 5, and if you're performing really well, you get the additional bonus and the rest of your salary, so to speak. That's just a rule of thumb. Katie, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
And basically what I want to add is something that Andrew had talked about earlier. Maybe he did not shout about it, but he keeps saying it, is that part of the box that the startup is in is that you're restrained by resources. You're constrained. You do not have as much money as other people. So you're bootstrapping. So one of the most difficult decisions a founder faces is, how much do I give my salespeople? Don't forget, you're also the salesperson here, because you're talking about then how much do you pay yourself for every person that is onboarded. What I have seen working, because I've been on the extremes in the current insurance environment, I'll talk about Kenya, most of East Africa, is where it's a commission only. And where it's commission only, what we have done, or what I even train people to do, is that there has to be a process of selling the sales career to that salesperson, to that person who you want, so that you're able to get them absolutely clear that this is life or death. If you do not bring anything, then you die. Yep. So part of the process is you've got to, sometimes you think that you're the tough guy because you're the employer, and you forget that also the person you're interviewing is assessing you. So are you able then to put up, in terms of resources, a minimum amount? And I'll agree with Andrew. A minimum amount guarantees you or allows you to then instruct the salesperson in terms of telling them, yes, you've got to fill in the CRM. Yes, you've got to do this, that, the other, because you're already paying them a base salary. But then the bonus then rewards them for doing extra work. So when you're starting up, you might want to play with that, again, based on your resources. Then another way that I've found is, even as a business, you can say, I'm going to pay advance commissions. That I know if these guys close this 100,000 shillings worth of sales, I would have paid them 10,000 shillings, or rather $10,000, or 10% of that. So if I give them an advance commission, which could be like a base pay, it will allow them, it's fuel for the vehicle to be able to go out and knock on all those doors. And at least I can guarantee that, and this guy shows up at work, and I am able to show them, and usually it's a 3-month period. Within that 3-month period, how much money they can make. So there's a lot of hand-holding that you would have to do initially as the founder. And at some point, if you are able to convince them, I've been able to do that. Most people want to get on to commission sales because the promise of earning more is a lot higher. So you've got to get a bit of a balance, but it's something that we can explore deeper, maybe even away from this session, or when you meet Andrew face to face. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks, Katie. Before people leave, there's one thing I think, Abu, you had mentioned around the different sales strategies. I wanted to just share with you one slide which we had used in a previous Beamer lab, which is this. So this kind of, gives you an overview of some of the major selling strategies. So, and like I said, I think one of the best views in my view, for depending on what it is that you're doing, is probably strategic selling. But you had mentioned SPIN, the situation, problem, implication, and need/payoff. But you'll find that the basics are the same. We are talking to the same thing. You have to identify a need that you attach your value to. There's target selling, where you already have probably sold something to a customer. How do we get deeper in that customer? We have the challenger sale, which is a variation of SPIN selling, value selling, matching opportunity to product capability. We have solution selling, and then we have MEDIC as our last one. And then I think the one I was talking about here is around strategic selling, which is based on the customer point of view and then building your engagement backwards. It's more complex. It's good specifically, for complex sales, and it takes a little bit more work than some of the other strategies. So that's just what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I've seen one other hand. Katie, you want to say something?
Yeah, just quickly, so that again, guys don't get too stuck in a lot of these different selling styles.
Yeah.
I train salespeople every day, and I get all of these different SPIN selling, strategic selling. There's now a new one called acoustic selling. So these things will all come up. But what I need you to remember is, like we did in school, we call it primary school. When we were small, we were 12 or 11. There's a mathematical formula called BOD-MAS. Yeah, brackets of divide, multiply, addition, subtraction. And that's the way to follow every mathematical problem. In much the same way, SPIN selling, strategic selling, and so on and so forth, all follow the same formula. Yeah. So the four things that SPIN selling tells you about are the basics that then go, whether it's what Andrew showed you, BANT has another whole process. Yeah. Yep. Budget, whatever, authority, need, timeline. Again, there are all these catchphrases, but then they all say the same thing. So always remember that you've got to get your basic BOD-MAS or your basic process in place. Then you can adopt all of these things, because they will just enrich your sales process. Yeah, and that's all. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Katie. We have a question. Please go ahead, Oni.
Hello. I just have something to share and maybe hear on your thoughts on our process. Because the way we implement our solution is like for clusters, for medical clusters. Say, you have a clinic that works with labs and other allied healthcare facilities. So initially we were just implementing for individual practices, but now it's a cluster solution. And what I'd like to hear your thoughts on is, how would you go about the contracts that they have to sign? Because one, they have to include the clauses on data sharing. And now the other big question is, do we have an individual contract for each one of them? Or can we have one contract where all the parties do sign to it? And also we want to make sure that whenever somebody wants to leave a cluster, it's not going to disrupt the relationship with the others or anything like that. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on how you would go about the agreements for such kind of a cluster solution.
All right. I'm not a legal expert in terms of contracting, and I would probably need to understand a lot more around this, what you're calling a cluster. So I'm not sure if that we can cover in this particular conversation right now. But happy to take it one-on-one, and then I'll probably try and understand that a bit more. But like I said, first, I'm not a legal expert. I think what you'd think about in terms of, okay, number one, who is the customer? Who is your primary customer? Who can you not deal without?
Yeah, so the setup is such that we have an anchor facility, which is the clinic, a specialist clinic.
Yes.
Yes. So that is the anchor facility, and then the others are allied facilities. We can either implement a system in that facility or just implement API communication with the anchor facility. So with the anchor facility, we have a contract with them. So now the question is, when we bring the cluster solution, because it's beneficial to both, in the sense that the lab currently will send the lab results by email. But once the integration is implemented, then those results go directly into a particular patient's profile, such that that specialist clinic can have
access,
visibility into longitudinal visibility into that patient. So it helps also with the lab that after entering the results, they don't have to send emails for each patient to a clinic. Once the results are set up in that system, they will automatically be available at the other facilities.
No, okay, now I understand the picture, but like I said, I think that is probably more a legal question, because they have to take into account the regulatory environment that you're operating in. You mentioned around data privacy, what your data privacy laws say, specifically around healthcare, tends to be quite tight. So I guess it will be more localized to your data privacy laws. And the impact of, as you said, maybe one or two of the partners pulling out or joining in, and what that means to the exposure that you may have with the host facility. So I probably would not be the best person to help you review that, but I can probably think maybe before we meet next week of how some other people, not necessarily in healthcare, but for example, in the telcos are handling that, because in telcos, they're already doing it with people through APIs, being able to connect to multiple, whether it's government or other private institutions, and then how they handle that from a legal perspective.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I think then from me, it's to say a big thank you. I really do appreciate you guys hanging in here for the 1 hour, 45 minutes that we have been on. It's been great engagement, and I'm really looking forward to meeting some of you next week. Is it next week or the week after? And hopefully we can then now have some deeper conversations in some of the different areas. But through Andrew of Telistic, I believe is managing one-to-one sessions. Please reach out to Andrew. I'll share these slides with him, these slides for this week. I also realized I didn't send the ones for last week, and you can use them to refer and hopefully build towards the final bit of our engagement, which will be really testing some of the build-up that we have been having to this point. So thank you very much. KT, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, it's just a pleasure at least to engage with guys and to see just how interesting it is, given that sometimes we have also gone through this journey and we see a lot of eagerness, and maybe you see yourself 20 years ago or 10 years ago when you are struggling to fix this. So I appreciate the engagement, and I'd just like to encourage guys to share more. Obviously, this forum, everyone feels like, yeah, I'm going to be the next Facebook, or I'm going to be the next OpenAI. So you want to keep your cards close to your chest. And while you do that, please remember that also the best way for us to learn would be by sharing what our experiences are, and we should actually question more. And in the words of Vusi, give us a chance also to apply the 80-20 rule, where we are listening in order to be able to then help you guys solve your problems. But thanks a lot, and thanks for the engagement.
So thank you, everyone. It's been wonderful connecting online. So hopefully we will meet up face to face in the near future. And then, yeah, we'll see what's next. So have yourselves a good evening wherever you are. And cheers. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, and
Yeah.
good night.
Good night.